Today we're going to be talking about subdividing investment property, buying an investment property and looking at it as a subdivision potential. I'm going to talk about the pros and cons here. The pro is that if we get it right, we can make a lot of money, right? And there's no doubt about it. And so I'm all for it. If we want to make money, let's do it, because if we want to minimise our debt, if we want to grow our wealth, it's all about increasing our income ultimately. That's the key to the game. So if subdividing in property is one of them, let's do it. But I will say with a preface, there is a skill to it. And what I have seen over the 20 years that I've been helping people with tax, that 80% of the people haven't mastered the skill when they decide to get into subdividing investment properties. And I'm going to talk about where people as investors go wrong. So the first thing that can go wrong is that not enough research has been done into the detail of the property they're going to subdivide. And instead, it's an emotional decision of, hey, I want to subdivide a property and I live over here in suburb X and I think it's a good suburb, so I'm actually going to subdivide in this suburb. No thought about the figures, no thought about anything else outside of we like the suburb, we live here, so we're going to subdivide here. That's mistake number one. Mistake number two is not anticipating how long you're going to hold the property for before you subdivide it and doing the maths. Because sometimes if you're buying at the high point in the cycle, you're not getting the bargain property, which we all try to do, but can be difficult to find. And so we buy at a high price point. Well, then we need time to work on our side to create an increase in the value of the property to create the right margin. Which means we might have to hold it for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. In general, I've seen when people do this strategy, they probably hold the property for 5 years before they look at subdividing. They haven't done the maths and they don't work out that the property is actually costing them about $150 a week. So that's $7,500 a year times by 5 years, $35,000 in holding out-of-pocket costs. It'll probably even be more now because the government a couple of years ago changed the legislation to minimise the amount of depreciation that we can claim on old properties. So, but let's work on $7,500 or $35,000-ish over the last 5 years in holding costs on that property. So whatever we bought it for, we need to add that on to the cost of the property purchase price when we're working out our gains. So mistake number three is not ascertaining the correct margin for subdividing. There's a lot of risks that goes into subdividing a property. And so we need to make sure that we allocate the right amount of money that we want to make as a profit to the risk in the actual subdivision itself. To give you an example, if you buy just a standard house and you're going to split it 1 into 2, and you think, okay, you do the maths and you're going to make about $20,000 on this property, and it's got to take you 1.5 years to get that $20,000 return. Have we considered that we're going to lose a portion of that to tax? Have we considered the holding cost, as I spoke about just before, that has to be reduced off it? We might only be walking away with $5,000. Now, earning $5,000 for 1.5 years work and a lot of work, is it actually worth the risk? Because if our figures are wrong and there's a fluctuation, well, what might happen is that we might actually lose on this project. So selecting the right project, looking at all the numbers becomes fundamentally important. You get all these experts out there that go subdivide, 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 put them in trust, go for a hammerhead, go for a splitter, knock it down, all these sort of things, right? And they are all viable strategies, but you've got to make sure you implement the subdivision investing strategy properly. So what do you want to look at? You want to look at the block size. Fundamentally important. You want to manufacture extra units out of the block that you buy. So generally a 1 into 2 isn't going to generate enough land margin for you. Most developers I know will say that we need to do 1 into 5 to get the best returns, but at least 1 into 3. So therefore, how do we generate that extra block? We need to go to our zoning, our council, and see which ones are going to allow for medium to high density subdevelopment compared to residential. where they're going to be more conservative and want bigger blocks. So we need to do our council research first. So we need to pick our geographical region. Which state do we want to go for? Then go to the council, look at the local council, see what they're going to allow for that location. Then we need to find the actual property and do the numbers on it. But the holding cost is the other one, as I discussed, that really can catch people out. Depreciation is the other one. We've got to remember, like when we speak about new property, we can claim the building. So if it's a $200,000 building, we divide it by 40, right? Which means we can claim $5,000 a year, every year for 40 years as depreciation on the building. Then we get all the fixtures and fittings inside. For an established property, one that we're going to subdivide and invest and have as investment property, we're going to be quite limited to the depreciation, so more holding costs. The other thing is that we don't calculate the ballpark costs in relation to the expense of subdivision. So we've got water charges, we've got the council charges, we've got the demolition. And the more blocks that we're carving it into, the higher cost that comes with it. So now I'm not here to say don't do subdividing. I'm here to say do subdividing, but do it properly. And just be aware that there's a lot of work that has to go into it and a lot of time. Right? It's not as easy as what we think, but if you follow the formula, look for the block size, look for the opportunities. If you get one block, can you get a neighbour's block? Can you get two neighbours' blocks to increase the land component? Do you have the money to be able to do that? Have you spoken to the bank? Right? Check off all those points that I've discussed in this video, and then you'll be successful in subdividing.